Hey guys, hope you all are having a great week of training. Today's topic, we're going to be discussing how to run a sub 250 marathon. That is an extremely tough time. Anybody's trying to run 249, 59 or faster for this distance. You need to run 629 mile pace for 26.2 miles or 401 per kilometer for 42.2 kilometers. So yes, you do have to have a certain amount of talent in order to run under 2 hours and 50 minutes. I've always believed in that, athletes, because I know I was one of those types of athletes. If you're running low on talent, then you have to make up for it with your work ethic and your drive and motivation and the willingness to get out and put in the work. And you may have to work much, much harder than somebody that is, has a very high VO2 max or a very high capability to clear lactic acid. And a lot of athletes have to start working on working much harder for a longer period of time than somebody that, say, is very talented that can get the results much quicker. But I think for anybody that's trying to run at this specific pace, the same fundamentals go for somebody that's trying to run a 250 marathon or somebody that's trying to run under a 5-hour marathon. You have to practice training much, much faster than your goal race pace. But you also, before you start doing all of that harder anaerobic work, you have to lay the foundation of easy, relaxed mileage first. No house is built without a foundation. So if your foundation is weak and you start trying to jump into harder anaerobic sessions or trying to do tempo runs that are far too fast, too early in your training, it's going to be very disappointing. You're trying to go after a very, very competitive time. I think, and I've had conversations with runners as well as non-runners that talk about the marathon. And for me personally, I think anybody that really goes under 3 hours is starting to get close to that elite level. You have to be in extreme physiological shape, very strong mentally to break a 3-hour marathon. To go under 2 hours and 50 minutes for the marathon, to run a 250 marathon, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of patience. It takes more of a focus on specific training and quality rather than just volume. There are some athletes out there that work very well with just putting in volume and oftentimes, sometimes get results. They get legitimate results just by putting in consistent high volume over a very long period of time. But when you're trying to run at these types of paces, it's very important to start getting to a point where you can clear lactic acid more efficiently and faster than it's building up in your bloodstream and in your muscles when you're racing. So it's very important to train much faster than sub 250 marathon pace. So running, the pace you need to hold, again, 629 mile pace or 401 per kilometer pace. So my type of training, and this is how I set up a lot of my training plans in the running courses, you need to get to a point where you can do repeat miles on the track at closer to around 520 to 525 mile pace, do tempo runs that are closer to around 608 to 615 mile pace, in terms of kilometers, doing threshold runs of 303 to 305 to 310, in that range, 303 to 310 per K pace during your tempo runs, and extending the amount of time you're doing these tempo runs. Okay, a big mistake that a lot of athletes are making in the marathon, regardless if you're trying to run 4 hours, or you're trying to run a 250 marathon or a sub 220 marathon, if you're not training, if your percentage of your weekly volume is spent, too high of a percentage of your weekly volume is spent running at slower paces, much slower than goal race pace, it's just making you a very strong endurance athlete. You're going to be a very strong, long, slow, easy distance runner. You want to develop that speed, continue to work on your overall leg speed. I mean, you and I, we both, if you're training for a marathon, you more than likely have 98 to 99% slow twitch muscle fibers and maybe 1 to 2% fast twitch muscle fibers. So there's only so much speed that we have. When I was in high school, my personal best for 400 was 53.4. I didn't have that 46 to 47 400 meter speed, but I was pretty strong for 400 meters, but I continued to develop that speed all throughout my racing career, even to this day. I do strides, which if you're wanting to go 250 for the marathon, you're already a highly driven, focused athlete if you're looking for this type of time already. So a lot of this you're going to know, but doing strides you're working on in terms of doing strides and doing hard speed sessions like repeat 800s at around 235 to 240, repeat 400s anywhere from like 117 to 120 on the track, repeat 200s at like 37 to 39 on the track, with more rest when you're not very fit early on in your training, and then speeding up the intensity of the intervals and lessening the rest between those intervals. All of those types of speed-related workouts are helping you to recruit more fast-twitch muscle fibers. And the more of those you can recruit, the more efficient you're going to become at clearing lactic acid and being able to handle higher amounts of lactic acid buildup when you're racing fast. Paying attention to hydration in training, making sure that you're practicing drinking rather than just sipping during your long runs. Put those water bottles out every 5K or every 3 miles during your long run. And when you get to the water bottle, focus on ingesting that entire water bottle or close to it. Test that in training. Test out, how much fluid your stomach can handle in training first. Make the mistakes in training so that when you get to the race, you don't make the mistakes. And because you've practiced it over and over, it becomes automatic. And, again, running 250 for the marathon, you have to also be extremely smart with your pacing early on. You don't want to go too anaerobic too soon in the race. You want to make sure that you have sufficient glycogen storage in the last 10 kilometers of that race to be able to continue to pick up the pace or maintain the pace that you're running at, so that you get to the finish line with 2:49:59 or faster on the clock. And it's not an easy thing. You're going after a very, very tough time. So a key recommendation for athletes that are trying to run a 250 marathon is start running longer tempo runs. When you're doing a long run, or when you're doing a tempo run, it should be, a little bit faster than goal race pace. So 6:29 is your goal race pace for per mile pace. I would focus on getting closer to around 6:08 to 6:10 per mile during that tempo run, and extending the duration of the tempo run. When I was training, prior to breaking 220 for the marathon, I would get out to around 10 to 12 to 14 miles in length for my tempo runs. Another thing that helped me tremendously to run 219 was starting to run varied pace long runs, not just long, slow, easy long runs every single weekend. Of course, you still want to do easy long runs, up to about 3 hours in length. That's going to build a huge amount of endurance. But at the same time, if you're doing this every single weekend and not prepping to break 2 hours and 50 minutes, if you're not, examples of a varied pace long run is this, and this is some of the things I would do when I was training prior to breaking 220. I would do like a 2-mile warm-up, 16 miles at 160 beats per minute. So I was wearing a heart rate monitor. And when I was very fit, I was training in Colorado Springs in Colorado, and my pace would be anywhere from, it would range from in the high 520s to 550s per mile. I also did this when I was at sea level in Tennessee prior to the 2011 Monumental Indianapolis Marathon. In fact, I did a 20-miler running again at 160 beats per minute at 5:30 mile pace. I still remember I did it in 1 hour, 50 minutes, and 2 seconds for the 20-mile long run. But the following week, I went out and I ran around 9-minute mile pace for my easy long run. I would do like a 22-miler the following week, but it would be around 8 to 9-minute mile pace. So you see the drastic changes, and then I would do other types of long runs where, say I would do like a 2-mile warm-up, 4 miles at 6-minute mile pace, 4 miles at 6:30 mile pace, 4 miles at 5:20 mile pace, maybe run 3 miles easy, and then run an all-out mile at the very end of the long run. So varied paces, where I'd go like 5:05 for the last mile. So you have to think like that. You have to. This is why the best especially the long distance runners, the best long distance runners, the athletes that are running well under 250 and making it look easy. There's a lot of things they're focusing on. Yes, they're focusing on hydration during the race, training well below goal 250 marathon race pace in training. They're training more toward down 225 to 230 marathon race pace. So again, you want to train much, much faster than goal race pace. Do one VO2 max workout per week. So, examples of that is like 3 by 2 miles on the track, running at around 5:35 per mile pace for that, or 5:35 to 5:40 mile pace for the 2 mile reps, with say 7 to 8 minutes recovery early on when you're not as fit. And then when you're very fit, you become very, your body is adapted to the hard anaerobic training you're doing, then give yourself say like 4 to 5 minutes rest between each one of those 2 mile reps. Now granted, again, you're not going to start off doing 2 mile repetitions on the track at 5:35 to 5:40 mile pace. It might start off, you may start off at say 6:15 mile pace. And then as your body adapts to the hard anaerobic training you're doing, your heart doesn't have to work as hard, your pace is going to speed up, and you're going to focus on giving yourself less recovery in between each one of those reps. Or doing repeat 200s, at say like 10 to 14 200s at 38 seconds per rep when you're very fit, with say 60 seconds recovery between each one of those reps. Doing those types of workouts where you're running much, much faster than goal race pace, that's going to make you much more efficient come race day to hold 250 marathon race pace. And it's doing all the other little details that go into running under 629 mile pace or under 401 per kilometer pace. It's doing the longer tempo runs for a longer period of time at a high intensity, doing varied pace long runs, alternating one weekend long run, which is much more specific, training at, near, or far below your goal race pace during that long run, followed the next week by a nice, easy, relaxed long run. So again, you're recovering from the hard training you're doing. It's also making sure you're paying attention to your nutrition, proper amounts of protein intake, so your muscles will recover from the hard long runs you're doing, the volume you're putting in. It's paying attention to the paces you're running at on your easy days. If it's an easy day, I cannot harp this on you enough. I cannot tell you this enough. Don't worry about the pace you're running at on easy days. Relax. It's an easy recovery day. What you want to focus on is hitting those splits during those tempo runs, during those repeat intervals on the track, whether those are repeat, 10 by 1K on the track at around 3:15 to 3:20 when you're very fit. It's those types of workouts, the hard anaerobic workouts, the much easier relaxed workouts, and the longer tempo runs, the longer long runs, as well as the varied pace long runs. All of these combined will get you to the point where you get that 250 marathon race pace to feel easier, more sustainable for a longer period of time. And you must, without question, you have to see yourself doing this. It's so critical to visualize yourself seeing what you want to do in your mind first, well in advance before it happens. When I was a 2:43:36 marathoner, I continued to see myself breaking 2 hours and 22 minutes. I knew that it was a 2008 USA Olympic Trials B standard time. I knew I needed to run 2:21:59 in order to earn an Olympic trial standard. Unfortunately, I broke the 2:20 marathon barrier, bypassed the 2:22 marathon barrier, but I broke 2:20 28 days after the 2008 USA Olympic Trials for the marathon were held. So it was like qualifying for the Olympic trials for me, but it was that consistent action over a long period of time, consistently training well below what the types of pace I was aiming to run at for the marathon. So I was running well below 5-minute mile pace, and I got to a point where I could hold 26.2 miles at 5:19 mile pace, or around 3:17 or 3:18 per K pace. It's the same with you when you're trying to break a 250 marathon. Also focus on your taper. Do a 10-day taper rather than a 3-week taper. Start dropping your volume and your intensity only 10 days out rather than doing it 3 weeks out from a marathon. It's going to make you feel more energized, ready to go, and less lethargic and less tired. So I hope this brief video is of assistance to you in breaking the 250 marathon. I do have a sub 250 marathon training plan on RunDreamAchieve.com. I also have a sub 230 marathon course that's on the website as well. If you're aiming for that as well, it's a much more in-depth one-on-one coaching course that will help get you under 2 hours and 30 minutes once that you're ready to do that. But if you're wanting to aim for breaking 250, definitely check out the training plans as well. I have a lot of resources below all of my videos that are there for you too. So wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.